That's how I'd start this story if I could say it out loud without breaking apart. My name is Eliza Hart. I'm 27 years old. I work in digital marketing. And last Tuesday, I stood in my kitchen for 23 minutes staring at the microwave clock, trying to remember if I had eaten dinner or cried through it. I live alone. Well, technically, I don't. There's Max. He's a golden retriever. He's 8. And he's the only heartbeat in this house that didn't walk away from me. This wasn't supposed to be my life. You know how people say, "You'll be fine. You've got so much going for you." Yeah, I believed them too, until my parents decided to move to Arizona for a fresh start, and my boyfriend Derek announced, over leftover pad thai, that he needed space. The irony? I gave everyone space, and I was the one left gasping for air. Tonight the house is silent. No flickering TV. No humming dishwasher. No footsteps. No voice shouting, "You left your charger in the car again." Just the sound of my own breath and Max's paws occasionally shifting on the hardwood floor. I walked in after work today and realized for the first time, really realized, that no one would care if I didn't speak a single word until tomorrow, or the next day. Except him. Max sat by the door, wagging his tail as if I were someone special, someone worth waiting for. I managed to smile, but he saw through it. He always does. I dropped my bag, took off my shoes, and collapsed onto the couch like something had snapped. Maybe it had. And Max? He followed. Quietly. Not bouncing, not playful. Just there. I should rewind. There was a moment, just before I walked into the house, that stuck to my bones. I'd been in the car, parked in the driveway, holding my phone in my lap. My fingers hovered over Derek's name. I didn't want to call him. I didn't even want to hear his voice. But I wanted to not be alone more than I wanted to be proud. Before I could make the mistake, Max appeared at the window, his face tilted, his ears perked. Waiting. That's what made me put the phone down. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I swear, something about that look, like he knew, froze me. It was like he was saying, "Don't do it. Come inside. Let me fix this." I didn't think much of it until later. So here we are. The house is heavy with nothingness. I'm on the couch with a blanket I don't remember pulling over me. Max is pressed up against my leg. My phone buzzes once. Spam. Of course. I toss it across the room. It lands with a soft thud and a satisfying silence. Then Max shifts. He gets up slowly, walks over to the phone, sniffs it, and then does something I've never seen him do before. He pushes it, not just a nose nudge. He pushes it across the floor, scraping slowly against the wood, back toward me. I sit up. "What are you doing?" I whisper, barely loud enough for the room to catch. He stops, looks at me, and then lays down on top of the phone, like he's guarding me from it. Like he's saying, "No more of that." I laugh. Not because it's funny, because it's terrifying that a dog might be the only thing in my life right now that actually sees me. And it only gets weirder. He stands up, walks down the hallway, then trots back with something in his mouth. I don't recognize it at first. It's small, grayish blue, a little ragged. He drops it in front of me, then sits down, eyes locked. It's my old stuffed elephant, Milo, from childhood. I haven't seen it in years. I thought I'd given it away. But somehow, Max found it, dug it out, brought it back, and laid it at my feet like an offering to the ghosts I haven't spoken to in forever. I blink. My throat tightens. "I don't know how you knew," I murmur, voice cracking. "But I needed this." Max doesn't move. He just stays there, guarding the space between us like he's keeping something dark away. I reach out and touch Milo's frayed ear. It smells like dust and memory. And then, without planning it, without thinking about it, I start to cry. Not soft, dignified tears. Ugly, body-shaking sobs that rip through me before I can stop them. My arms curl around my stomach like I'm trying to hold myself together from the inside out. Max doesn't bark. He doesn't whine. He moves closer, pushes his warm body against mine, and stays still. For a long time. I don't know how long. Eventually, I run out of tears. I'm left in silence again. But it's different this time. This silence is shared, and it's Max who breaks it, not with a sound, but with his eyes. He looks at me with this strange, focused gaze, like he's telling me, "This isn't over. You don't get to give up yet." It's unnerving and comforting and wild, because suddenly I wonder, what if he knows more than I do? What if he's been waiting for me to fall apart just so he could show me how to put myself back together? I sit up straighter. The lights are still off. The room's still empty, but it doesn't feel lifeless anymore. Just quiet. And Max, he curls up beside me, lets out a long sigh, and rests his chin on my thigh, as if to say, "I've got you." And in that moment, I believe him. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know if I'll feel stronger or if I'll cave again. But tonight, something shifted. And it wasn't just me. Max did something. Something small. Something big. Something I didn't even know I needed. And that was just the beginning. Because nobody was home. Except my dog. And he did that. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but the streetlights outside had turned the window panes into panels of pale gold, and everything inside the living room was still. Except for Max. He was sitting, beside the couch, alert, watching me, not sleeping, not relaxing, just watching, like he was on duty. My neck ached. My legs were stiff. I must have fallen asleep curled up with the blanket still tangled around me. Milo the stuffed elephant pressed tight to my chest. I blinked into the silence and tried to remember when exactly I'd passed out. And that's when it hit me. I didn't dream. Not one single nightmare. Not one flashback. No running. No drowning. No Derek. Only Nai quiet. That was new. Max was still staring at me. His eyes had that strange shimmer again. Something between alertness and something deeper. Something human. Something knowing. "You okay?" I asked him, half smiling, trying to sound like myself again. He didn't wag his tail. Didn't move. Instead, he stepped closer, placed one paw, gently, on the edge of the couch, and pressed his weight into it. Not enough to hurt. Just enough to keep me right there. I shifted. He pressed harder. "Max," I said quietly, "I just want to go to the kitchen." Nothing. Just pressure. Steady. Intentional. It wasn't aggressive. It was insistence. He didn't want me to leave. I furrowed my brow, confused, until I realized I didn't want to go to the kitchen. Not really. I wanted to move because sitting still meant feeling things again. And Max knew it. This dog, my dog, had somehow learned to anchor me to the present. Tears stung at the back of my eyes again, but I swallowed them. I wasn't going to fall apart every time he looked at me like that. I forced a laugh and tried to slide to the edge of the couch. Okay, I'm staying," I whispered, lifting my hands in surrender. Only then did Max back off, slowly, carefully, and settle onto the floor beside me, one paw still lightly touching my foot, like a leash made of touch. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Eventually, the silence in the room thickened. Not with dread, but with a kind of presence. Like the house was breathing again, like the air had started paying attention to us. It was weird. I kept waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. No thunder, no tears, no drama. Just this. Me and Max, wrapped in quiet, in the pouting, dim glow of city light filtering through blinds, until I made a mistake. I picked up my phone. I don't know why. Maybe muscle memory. Maybe the need to scroll, to numb, to swipe away what I was feeling. But the second I did, the exact second, Max's head shot up. He stared at the device like it had teeth. And then, he jumped onto the couch, all 45 pounds of him, right in my lap. "Whoa," I gasped, caught off guard. He wasn't rough. He didn't bark or growl, but he planted himself there, warm, heavy, and completely immovable, right on top of me, chest pressed to mine, snout brushing my chin. And the phone? It slipped from my hand, fell, clattered onto the floor. Max didn't chase it, didn't even look at it. He stayed where he was, breathing steady, eyes closed, like this was the only thing that mattered. Him, me, together. I didn't move. Couldn't, I just laid there, pinned beneath the weight of a golden retriever who had decided that tonight I didn't get to disappear. And I let him, because maybe I needed it. Maybe I needed to be held down by something that wanted me here. Later that night, after Max finally slid off and curled at my feet again, I tried once more to stand. This time, he didn't stop me. But when I reached the hallway, heading toward the bedroom, he got up and followed, right at my side, shoulder to thigh, like a shadow that didn't trust the dark behind it. I walked into the kitchen instead, opened the fridge, stared. Was nearly empty. Half a jug of almond milk, a wrinkled apple, an old container of Greek yogurt I hadn't touched since the breakup. I sighed and shut the door. Max tilted his head. I know, I muttered. This is not a dinner. I grabbed a box of crackers and collapsed into a kitchen chair. Max sat across from me, just watching. I popped a cracker in my mouth, chewed, swallowed, dry, tasteless. Everything tasted like cardboard lately. I leaned forward and whispered, "Do you think I'm losing it?" Max didn't blink. He just stood, walked over, and, again, placed something at my feet. Not Milo. Not the remote. This time, it was a ball, one of his toys. He dropped it, then backed away a few steps. Sat down. Stared. "You want me to play?" His tail thumped once against the tile. I shook my head, almost laughing. "Max, I haven't played fetch since last summer." He didn't move. Just kept watching. Waiting. I looked at the ball. Something in me cracked open. Not from sadness, from memory. The last time I threw that ball, I'd been smiling. Actually smiling. Derek had been taking pictures. We were out in the yard, sun on our backs, music playing from my phone. Max had darted through the grass like a comet. I reached down, picked up the ball. It was warm from his mouth, slightly squished. I stood, walked to the hallway, turned, and tossed it gently down the corridor. Max exploded into motion, gone in a flash of fur. He came back seconds later, triumphant, dropped it at my feet again. His eyes glowed, and I laughed. Not a fake laugh, a real one, small, cracked, but real. He barked, once, and wagged his tail, and I swear to God in that moment it felt like he was saying, "There she is." Back on the couch, hours later, Max fell asleep with his head on my knee. I couldn't move without waking him, so I didn't. I just sat there, watching the rise and fall of his breathing. My heart felt full and fragile all at once, and somewhere deep inside, I realized the truth. He wasn't just comforting me. He was redirecting me. Every little thing he'd done, the elephant, the paw, the weight on my chest, the ball. It wasn't random. It was intentional, purposeful. This wasn't just a dog being sweet. This was Max doing something, trying to pull me back from the edge. He was interrupting the spiral. He was telling me, in the only way he could, I'm not letting you go. And I believed him. Because he hadn't left my side once. Not even for water. Not even when I cried into his fur and soaked it with something more bitter than sadness. Hopelessness. He stayed. He chose to stay. Even when I couldn't. Especially when I couldn't. So when I finally whispered, "Thank you," into the dark, I wasn't even sure if I was saying it to him, or to whatever force had given me a dog like this in the first place. A dog who wouldn't let me leave the couch, because he knew that if I had, I might never have come back. And that was the moment I started to believe. He wasn't just my dog. He was my anchor, my guardian, my rescue. And what he did that night, staying, holding, interrupting, was only the beginning. You don't notice the stillness of night until something cracks it open. It was 3:17 a.m. I remember that, clearly because the digital clock on my nightstand glowed like an accusation. Too bright, too cold. The kind of light that tells you you're not asleep and you haven't really been okay in a while. I sat bolt upright in bed, drenched in sweat, lungs aching like I'd been underwater too long. Another panic attack. No dream this time, just pressure. In my chest, in my head, in my skin. Like the silence had turned into something heavy and sat down on top of me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I couldn't. All I could do was stare at the dark ceiling, hands clenched into the sheets, waiting for the spiral to end. But before it did, before I could even draw in a full breath, I heard the sound. Click, click, click. Pause on the hardwood, then a soft bump against the half-closed bedroom door. Max. Seconds later, he was in the room. He didn't bark. Didn't make a sound. He just jumped onto the bed, found me in the dark, and laid his whole body across mine. Not gently. Not lightly. Deliberately. His front paws pressed against my ribs. His chest against mine. His nose tucked under my chin. He was heavy. Too heavy. I couldn't move. But the strangest thing happened. I could breathe again. It didn't make sense. Still doesn't. But somehow his weight calmed the noise. My racing pulse slowed. My muscles stopped shaking. I could feel the warm puff of his breath against my collarbone. His heartbeat, steady, strong, pressing into mine. And then, peace. Not full peace, but enough to come down from whatever mental cliff I'd been dangling off. I lay there for 10 minutes, maybe 20, maybe an hour. I don't know. Time felt suspended, like we were trapped in our own little world of fur and fear and quiet salvation. Eventually, I whispered, "You always know when I break, don't you?" He didn't move. He just stayed there, grounding me like the earth itself. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my bedroom in narrow, golden streaks. I blinked slowly, trying to remember how I'd fallen asleep. Max was no longer on top of me, but he was curled at the foot of the bed, still close enough to touch, still watching. I slid out from under the covers, quietly padded into the kitchen, and poured some cereal. just to feel like I had a routine again. Halfway through chewing the first spoonful, I stopped. There, on the hallway floor, was my sketchbook, open, face down, as if it had been carried or dragged from the back of my closet. I hadn't touched it in months. Not since Derek told me my little art thing was cute, but maybe I should focus on real work if I wanted to get promoted. I used to draw all the time, every morning, every lunch break, every night before bed, until I stopped, until I started, listening to voices that weren't mine, until the part of me that used to create went quiet. And now, without explanation, here it was, my old sketchbook, open on the floor like a dare. I walked over and picked it up. The page was smudged with faint pencil strokes, an unfinished self-portrait from a year ago. Only the say. Eyes were done. Wide, tired, unapologetically human. Max appeared beside me, sitting down slowly, watching. "Did you do this?" I asked softly, holding up the sketchbook. He wagged his tail. "Just once." I laughed. "You went into the closet? Pulled this out?" He tilted his head. I shook mine in disbelief. "You're a freak, you know that." He licked my hand, and I melted. Later that afternoon, I sat by the living room window with a mug of tea, sketchbook balanced on my lap. Max lay, beside me, his chin resting on my ankle, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I began to draw. Slowly. Carefully. At first, just lines, then shapes, then depth, not of landscapes. Not even of myself. Of Max, his ears, his warm, attentive eyes, the slight scruff under his chin where his collar rubbed, the curve of his back as he curled into me like a comma in a sentence I hadn't finished yet. And as I drew, I talked, quietly, barely above a whisper. I told him everything, about the panic attacks, about the suffocating silence, about how I'd deleted Derek's number but still remembered every digit, about how I missed being seen but was terrified of being noticed, about how alone I'd felt, even when people were around. I didn't cry. Not this time. Because Max didn't ask for tears. He asked for truth. And truth is quieter, more sacred. It lives in pauses and pencil strokes and warm bodies that don't walk away. That night, I dreamed. But it wasn't a nightmare. It was Max, running ahead of me through a field, stopping only when I called, waiting until I caught up, then sprinting forward again. A game. A memory that hadn't happened yet. When I woke up, I didn't feel dread. Felt light. And I didn't check my phone. I didn't scroll. I just rolled over and whispered, "Thank you." Max, curled in a sunbeam on the floor, opened one eye and blinked at me like, "Took you long enough." The thing about pain is that it doesn't ask for permission. It creeps in, uninvited. But healing? Healing sometimes knocks. Softly, repeatedly, through the strangest messengers, like an old sketchbook dragged out of the dark, like a ball nudged into your hand when you've forgotten how to smile, like a dog lying on your chest at 3 a.m., refusing to let the silence eat you alive. Max didn't just comfort me. He pulled parts of me out of hiding I didn't even know were buried. He found what I couldn't say, and said it for me. Without words, without logic, just presence and love and that steady, unwavering gaze that told me I was still here, still worth seeing, still mine. And that was everything. There's something no one tells you about healing. It doesn't arrive like a sunrise. It comes in waves. Messy, unpredictable, sometimes dragging you under just when you thought you'd made it to shore. And Max? Max rode every wave with me, even the violent ones, especially the violent ones. It started 3 days after I found the sketchbook. I was doing better, at least on paper. I was eating again, drawing, opening the curtains in the morning. I even vacuumed the living room. Max watched me with that tilted head of his, like he was both impressed and slightly insulted that I was cleaning up the hair he so generously left everywhere. But healing isn't linear, and the crash always comes when your guard is down. It was Friday evening, the kind that looks harmless. Golden light in the windows, neighbors laughing across the yard, birds on the fence like ornaments. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed, and I, stupidly, picked it up. Unknown number, no voicemail, no context, just a gut feeling that somehow it was him. I stood frozen, heart thudding. I tried to put the phone down. I really did. But I tapped it instead. The screen lit up. Text from Derek. Hey, just wondering how you've been. Weird. Not talking. Miss you sometimes, that's all. One line. But it was a match dropped into the dry grass of my mind. Suddenly, the whole house felt too small. Too loud. Too tight. I couldn't breathe again. I dropped the laundry basket, clothes scattered. I stumbled backwards into the wall, slid down to the floor. Max, who had been napping in the corner, bolted upright. He was at my side in seconds, and then he snapped. Not at me. Not violently. But with purpose. He barked. Once, loud enough to shake the windows. And snatched the phone from the floor in his mouth. He ran with it. Down the hall, into the bathroom, and dropped it in the toilet. Didn't even react at first. I just sat there, stunned. Then I laughed. A raw, broken, absolutely insane laugh. It bubbled up from a part of me that had been clenched for months. Maybe longer. Max padded back into the hallway, sat in front of me, and stared with his head cocked like, "You're welcome." I wiped my eyes and whispered, "That was dramatic even for you." He wagged his tail, smug. But I swear to God, it worked. The spiral stopped. The text? Gone. The urge to respond? Flushed. Literally. Max had made the decision I couldn't, and he'd done it like a soldier storming the battlefield. That's when I realized something. He was watching me constantly. Not casually. Not just out of loyalty or boredom. He was observing, studying, anticipating. The next day, I decided to test it. I pretended to cry, not to mock him, but to see if he'd react. I covered my face on the couch and let out a fake sob. Within 3 seconds, Max was in my lap. Whining, pawing, nudging my hands away. I stopped. He didn't. He kept nudging, even after I smiled and told him I was okay. He wasn't convinced, and that shook me more than the text had, because it meant he didn't just recognize my patterns. He memorized them, filed them away, prepared for the worst. Every time. Over the next few days, I began to notice how often he intercepted me. Not with drama, not like the toilet phone incident, but with tiny, calculated acts. When I lingered too long in bed, he'd pull the blanket off with his teeth. When I skipped a meal, he'd bring his food bowl to me and drop it, hard, at my feet. When I zoned out staring at nothing, he'd whine softly and push his head under my hand until I snapped out of it. And if I cried, he'd lie across my chest like a weighted blanket, heart to heart, every single time. He did that when I fell apart, not just once, every time, like it was his job, like I was his. One night, it got worse. It was late, past midnight. I'd just come out of the shower, hair dripping, towel clinging to me like second skin. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and froze. I didn't recognize her. Eyes hollow. Shoulders hunched. The same towel I used when Derek lived here, draped like a memory I hadn't consented to recall. It felt like the walls closed in. I backed into the hallway, knees shaking, heart racing. Max stood at the end of the corridor. Silent. Alert. Didn't call him. I didn't move. But he did. He approached slowly, step by step, until his nose touched my leg. Then he leaned into me, hard enough to pin me to the wall. He held me there with his body like a barricade, not to trap me, to anchor me. And for the first time, I let my knees buckle and slid down to the floor. He came down with me, curled his body around mine, and stayed. No sound, no movement, just fur, warmth, and safety. Eventually I whispered, "I think you're saving me," piece by piece. And Max? He licked the inside of my wrist, right where my pulse beats, and closed his eyes. I started keeping a notebook after that. Not a journal, not really. More like a log. A secret record of every time Max did something that brought me back. Day 17. Max blocked the hallway when I tried to shut myself in the dark. Day 18. He pawed at my sketchbook until I picked it up. Day 19. He refused to eat until I sat. Down and ate, too. Day 20. I broke down at the sound of a voicemail. Max unplugged the speaker with his teeth. Each entry reminded me I wasn't crazy. He knew. He understood. Not with words. Not with logic, but with instinct that cut deeper than most people's empathy ever had. He didn't ask me to explain myself. He didn't need me to be okay. He just refused to leave me inside the storm alone. I started going outside more. Max would tug me toward the park. Sometimes we'd walk in silence. Other times I'd talk. About nothing. About everything. He listened. Always. One day, I looked at him as we sat by the pond, ducks flapping in the distance, and said, "You know, I don't think I ever really let anyone love me before." He laid his head in my lap. That was his answer. And just when I thought I'd seen all his tricks, all the ways he rescued me, he did something new. It was raining. Hard. Thunder cracked the sky. Max hated storms. He usually cowered, tail between legs, hiding in the bathroom. But that night, I was the one trembling. I stood in the doorway, staring at the lightning, paralyzed by a fear I couldn't name. And Max, he came to me, walked into the storm, turned and waited. Rain soaking his fur, eyes locked on mine, waiting for me to follow. I stepped outside, and he barked, just once, like, "Yes, that's it. Come through this." And I did. Into the rain. Into the noise. Into him. We stood there together, soaked, shaking, hearts pounding. And I realized this is what he'd been doing all along, not protecting me from the storm, teaching me how to stand in it. There are moments in life that don't announce themselves, no drumroll, no spotlight. They arrive quietly, and when they pass, you realize everything that came before them was before, and everything after is something else entirely. This is about one of those moments, and how Max gave it to me. It had been 6 weeks since Derek's last text. The phone he used to contact me was now permanently dead, thanks to Max's dramatic toilet drop, and I hadn't bothered to replace it. I got a cheap backup just for emergencies, but I kept it tucked in a drawer, silenced, forgotten. The sketchbook was almost full. Each page marked not with pretty landscapes or perfect portraits, but with real things. Smudged pencil lines that carried my exhaustion. Quick strokes that shaped Max in every pose imaginable. Head on my knee, nose in my cereal bowl, front paws on my sketch pad. Even one with his eyes staring straight at the viewer like he was daring them to understand what he meant to me. That morning felt like any other. Cloudy. Quiet. Max and I had already come in from a walk where he tried to chase a squirrel and ended up tangled around a tree like a badly managed yo-yo. I'd laughed so hard I thought my ribs would split. But it wasn't just about laughter anymore. I'd started making small plans again. Emails, conversations, job leads, a potential art show in a tiny cafe downtown. Tiny pieces of a life. Mine. Reclaimed. But I didn't know what Max had been planning, and I didn't know it would be that day. It was around 2 p.m. when it happened. I was in my room, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a fresh cup of tea, sorting through an old box of letters and cards I'd never had the heart to throw away. Birthday wishes from people I didn't talk to anymore. A letter from my mom, the kind she only writes when she's too uncomfortable to speak. And at the very bottom, tucked under some receipts and a movie ticket from a date I no longer remembered, was Derek's letter, the one he wrote when we moved in together. Eliza, I know you overthink everything, but stop. This, us, it's going to work. Just trust me. I love you more than you love yourself. And that's okay. I'll carry the weight for both of us until you catch up. I remember reading it the first time and feeling safe. Reading it now, I felt cold, because I finally saw what I hadn't back then. That wasn't love. That was control dressed in poetry. The weight he claimed he'd carry was the weight he used to sink me. My hands trembled. I folded the letter, stood up, and walked it to the trash can. I dropped it in, closed the lid, and turned, only to find Max standing in the hallway. Still, ears up, eyes locked on me. He didn't move, didn't wag, didn't blink. And something about the way he looked at me, unflinching, urgent, stopped me cold. I knelt down. What is it? He didn't answer, obviously, but he did something he'd never done before. He turned, slowly, then walked away. One step, then another, paused, looked back, like he wanted me to follow, so I did. Down the hall, into the guest bedroom I barely used anymore. He stood in the doorway, waiting. I stepped past him, and froze. On the bed was my old hoodie, the one I wore the night Derek left. I thought I'd donated it, but Max had found it and placed something on top. My phone. Not the old one. The new one. Still dusty. Still silent. He'd dug it out of the drawer and brought it here. And beside it, next to the hoodie, beside the phone, was my sketchbook. All three things in one place. Max sat at the door, watching, and I finally understood. This wasn't random. This was the moment. He'd created it. Set the stage. My past. My present. And the thing that could shape my future, if I chose it. Max had brought me to the fork in the road and waited. I walked to the bed, sat down, picked up the hoodie, held it. Not to grieve, but to release. Folded it, tightly, neatly, then put it in the giveaway box by the door. Next, the phone. I turned it on. 1 beep, 2 updates, no missed calls, no messages. Perfect. I deleted Derek's number, again, even though I hadn't added it. And this time, I meant it. I turned off the phone and placed it back in the drawer, not to ignore it, but to own it. And finally, the sketchbook. I opened to the last page. Blank, waiting, and I drew. Not Max. Not me. Just a door. Open, light pouring through, and a shadow standing in the light. Max. Looking back, waiting. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I cooked dinner. Real dinner. Pasta, garlic bread, roasted vegetables. The works. Max sat at my feet the entire time like he didn't trust me to stay grounded unless he could feel the floor under me too. I talked to him the whole time. About the letter. The hoodie. The silence I'd finally stopped fearing. And then, when I sat down to eat, I offered him one small, crusty corner of garlic bread. He sniffed it, then turned away. Snob. But the message was clear. He hadn't stayed for scraps. He'd stayed for me. And now, he believed I didn't need saving anymore. Just company. We went to bed late. Max curled up, beside me, closer than usual. His head rested on my arm, and I could feel the soft flutter of his breath against my skin. I whispered, "Thank you for everything." And then, because I finally understood, I added, "But I think I've got this now." He didn't move, but he sighed. A long, slow exhale. And I swear, I felt him relax in a way I hadn't felt before, like he knew his mission was complete. I woke up around 4 a.m. to silence. Not the heavy, terrifying kind, but real silence. Still. Safe. I reached down. Max was still there. But this time, he wasn't watching me. He was sleeping. Deeply. The kind of sleep only someone who finally feels safe allows themselves to have. And that's when I cried. Not because I was broken, but because I wasn't. Because Max had given me that. Every bark, every push. Every time he blocked the door or dragged out my sketchbook or laid on my chest like a rock holding back the tide, that was the moment. That's what he did. He loved me back into my own body. Without words, without timelines, without judgment. And he never asked for anything in return. Just to be close. Just to stay. And now I get it. Now I feel it. Nobody was home that day. Nobody but me. And Max. And he did that. He made sure I never had to come home to emptiness again. Not because he filled the space, but because he taught me how to fill it myself.